like to begin by revisiting one of our old subjects. It could have been the title of this, Encirclement and Suppression. Encirclement and Suppression. And if anyone remembers, you can go back 20 years ago, however far you go back, we always talked about encirclement and suppression. Whether it was the discussion we just had privately about Imam Muhammad, it was encirclement and suppression. Surround that leader and try to suppress it. Okay, every leader, most leaders in the world, they have a group of people who take their personal interests above the national or universal interests. The friends that I knew in Iran, or still know, that was a time when they probably still do, they took their party interests above the interests of the state or the interests of Islam. Imam Khomeini had downplayed political parties. In other words, there's no more political parties. So he disbanded the parties that were even friendly to him, like combatant ulama, the fighting ulama. That party was his friends, but he disbanded them. I want to just the offensive against the Red Armies, in each encirclement and suppression campaign, the enemy employs the offensive, and I'll just use the term, but this, what I'm reading from, is about the rebellion in China. But it has the historical pattern involved in it. And this is where we first studied the historical pattern of encirclement and suppression. All oppressors against each and every movement or organization, they apply the same basic rule. Encircle or surround the people, cut it off from everything, and suppress it. That's just natural. That's the tactic. In each encirclement and suppression campaign, the enemy employs the offensive against the Red Army's defensive, and the Red Army employs its defensive against his offensive. This is the first stage of a counter-campaign against encirclement and suppression. Then the enemy employs the defensive against the Red Army's offensive, and the Red Army's employs the offensive against his defensive. This is the second stage of the counter-campaign. Every encirclement and suppression campaign has these two stages, and they alternate over a long period. I want to just make that clear, that this is true, that there's encirclement and suppression, and the enemy employs their offensive. They attack you, and you defend yourself. If you happen to survive over a long period of time, then you have a counter-campaign of encirclement against encirclement and suppression, and you attack them, and then they defend themselves against your campaign. It may not be a big open offensive like a worldwide campaign, but these are the rules, basic rules of encirclement and suppression. It has proclaimed their utter failure to encircle, pursue, obstruct, and intercept us. The Long March is also a propaganda force. It has announced to some 200 million people in 11 provinces that the road of the Red Army is their only road to liberation. Without the Long March, how could the broad masses have learned so quickly about the existence of the great truth which the Red Army embodies. The Long March is also a seeding machine. Okay. Does everybody know what the Long March was? The Long March is the most famous event in modern Chinese history. They started out with so many 100,000 people, and they fought a defensive battle against Chiang Kai-shek. And it was a 6,000-mile journey. Like they fought all the way to California and back to D.C. That's 6,000 miles. And that they crossed all the territory. If you went the southern route, you would be in the desert. Then you look up with them desert clothes on, which they all had, you up into the highest mountains. Freezing weather. Man, it was unbelievable. Swamps and everything. The Long March, but all the way you're encountering the people. You're educating the people. You're teaching the people. And so that's why he called a Long March a seeding machine. Also in Chairman Mao's writing, he always talked about a protracted struggle, long-range struggle. Now, we're already about ready to catch them in numbers. In fact, we have. Like if we say we've been doing a protracted 40-year struggle. Okay, they started in Communist Party in 1921, and then by the time in 1935 to 1949, if you want to call that a protracted struggle, that's only 14, 15 years, 10, good God Almighty, yes, 14, 15 years. Okay, we've had a 40-year struggle, conscious struggle, 40 years with the United States government. But the pattern is the same. They attack us. They pursue us. They obstruct. They're doing it right this very minute. And we accept openly, and that's what we're saying right now. We accept openly and gladly and happily your attempt, the United States, because see, we've offered them all type of friendship and lovey-dovey stuff, and they refused. Now, I know that the people that's listening, they said, them niggas is crazy. They're sitting there talking about you gonna now, you done offered the United States government with all of its power and prestige and position, and you're gonna offer them a chance to surrender to you. So I know what the people are thinking. They just don't study, right? They're not studying history. First of all, I'll get back to the subject. Look at our history and look at their history. In the last 40 years, where did we start? With literally nothing, right? And in 1980, they had everything. They had everything. They had global prestige. They had, man, the U.S. was still big. It was important, right? It was the United States government. Look at it now, and look at the erosion, and look at everything they did. They had World Trade Center. Well, they had the World Trade Center for what? So they could use it as a pretext to attack us, and they did. And they started in Afghanistan first. Then they started Iraq. Look at them. They were successful in starting the fitna, but look at what's happened to them. Afghanistan, they can't leave. They just can't. Every time they try to leave, they pleading. I wish you could hear them. Come on, man. Why don't y'all just sign anything and let us go. We've had it. Well, the U.S. didn't study the history. They thought, oh, history, we ain't gonna get took out like everybody else. They just took the Russians out. Well, the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was bad in those days, and they broke its back. All of our lectures say the first shoe have already fallen. They've taken out boss man, over there, and he come in as the Soviet Union. That whole Soviet Union, Poland and all of the Hungary, everybody there, right? And when it's all over, it's just Russia, right? Well, it's 1/6 of half most of the world. That's okay. But the U.S. didn't study that. It had its exceptions. I'm boss man. That happened to him. And the first few months, all the Russian generals and everybody was congratulating him. Y'all did a good job, man. Y'all knocked these boys over. Y'all did this, y'all did that. And they were congratulating the United States. And I congratulate them now. 18 years of butt whipping. And they've used everything. Remember, they dropped a daisy cutter over there a few years ago. That big old bomb that they dropped on a pair, something. 15. It's the biggest sub-nuclear explosion. What is it, 15,000 tons of TNT? Yeah, but they just drop it. And not only, an explosion, first of all, it collapses lung. It sucks all the oxygen out of the air for I don't know how long around. And they've used that on Afghanistan. How brutal could somebody be to use that type of stuff on people? When I went to Afghanistan, there's still camels running around. If you went to Peshawar and stuff like that, right in there, across from Afghanistan, the people still they probably gone now, but they still had camels and stuff like that running around. And they dropping daisy cutters on them. And they ain't broke them yet. Good God Almighty. Okay, that's boss man. And then, if you were to take Afghanistan as one arena, then Iraq is another. The only thing the United States and Russia has the power to kill people by the millions. So they went into Iraq and they just mowed down the people. Okay, the people come back crazy because they said, this is not a video game. Then they get a chance to think about it and say, we actually killed real people. And it ain't hardly nobody gets back here with good sense. Else it wouldn't be 22 people a day committing suicide. So that means it's 1,000 or 2,000 a day or more suffering depression and all of that stuff. If 22 kill themselves, get to that level, then it must be a whole cadre of them just coming up to the places are full. The medical facilities are full of people. Okay. Now, here we are in the middle of that, encirclement and suppression. And they're using everything in their book you could imagine. Do you remember Captain Ted? Captain Ted, the Marine, yeah, they used to come here. Captain Ted. They went to he was Jalil's friend. No, Captain Ted. At first he came with now he had to be probably the best Marine they had. But he came here, his purpose was to teach us guerrilla warfare. No, because him and his friend, when they came, Captain Ted was talking about, that's what he was talking about. It started over on A Street, yeah. He was talking about, I'm ready for martyrdom and all of that stuff. Because they know that was, in that time, that was heavily our line, because we coming off a heavy dose of martyrdom. Glassy-eyed, what you want to do. You know what I mean? And where you go to bed kind of thinking about it, and all during the day you have about a half hour where you just, salivating, ready, what? Martyrdom, bring it on. And that's healthy. That's a little healthy. That's not bad. You know, so that means you right at the peak of all that. Captain Ted came here, and I used to pay first of all, I knew where he came from, and it was automatically come in with Captain Bars from the Marines, and if we need something, no, huh? No, when they first came, they'd have uniforms on. Oh, we didn't have the FBI uniform. FBI uniform. The police that bought my first weapons for me. Wait a minute, because I don't like no weapons around me. Because that way can't nobody say nothing. So the FBI police came. I'll get back to Captain Ted. FBI police came, and then he had one of the sons of one of my best friends. When we was talking about the chief and all that, okay, bad, that's a big crew out there. Anyway, one of my best friends that was selling dope and everything, he was part of a high yellow crew out there. The whole family for decades been that. And his name was George. So his friend was going through, both of them FBI polices. So that means they're uniform, they're uniform, not agents. So they trying to get me to do this and get me to do that. So I'm saying, yeah, I'm from Oakland, and I'm looking at the guy, and I said, yeah, you know, George was one of my best friends out there. I wonder what happened to him. He had actually got killed. The guy said, yeah, George was my father. I said, oh, okay. So, and I suspected, not that they all, Judge Wilson, Lionel Wilson, was the mayor. And in those days, most of those type, one of the guys was a big dope dealer, which didn't have none of the characteristics of a drug dealer. He was part of their family. And then the people in the Masjid that was really following the chief there, I think they really was with the chief. They was from that family. But anyway, when I tell you that I went over to a gun show in Baltimore, he took me over there. I said, I'll go and look around. So he said, you want to get something? I said, I don't know, I don't. So he said, I can get it. So he pulled out his ID, and I looked at it, I said, oh, that's his FBI ID. So he got those guns, because I ain't had no, if they put it under my name, they'd close the place down. So he bought those two weapons, a SKS and a Mossberg, one of them short Mossbergs with pistol grip. I like that boy. So after I got it, they realized what was done. So I took it up to Philadelphia, and my family, in those days, stole it, because that, to me, it was evidence. I got evidence, because I have his ID. He had to give his ID to get that. Now I got evidence that they're trying to entrap me. Yeah, so they came in with a search warrant for up there, and they, all of a sudden, both of those weapons, I took them from here up there. Number one, I wouldn't have them by me, and they checking all the time, because it used to be a little house next door to the Masjid over there. They brought dogs up there, they was smelling around, and then they had them, I looked outside, I said, what's happening? So it was the marshals, they said, we're looking for somebody to run off from Lorton. So I drove around the block. I said, y'all are lying as so-and-sos I ever seen. There ain't nobody around here. Y'all got them dogs smelling all up against our house. And since we worked out in that little house we had iron over there, they thought it might be a weapons stash, because they didn't believe that a Negro was nonviolent. They didn't believe, like the way I talked and the way I presented things, they didn't believe I was nonviolent. They said, no, this nigga is violent. He's violent prone, and that's the way that is. look at here. They probably still feel